Hello folks, R1 here. It's been a while since I've given you a Virtual Realms update. First, I want to touch on a couple of points for War Thunder. A few days ago in the dev blog section on their website, I noticed that they were discussing the fact that they aren't very happy with the matchmaker. There's a shocker, neither are we. Particularly for realistic battles. And they may be switching the matchmaking system from its current battle ranking spread to something a little bit more specific. They're actually thinking of coming up with a spreadsheet that determines exactly what planes should be facing which other planes. In some ways it will be more restrictive, but in other ways much more precise. I think it gives them a much greater flexibility, although it's in what planes face each other, although I'm sure it's more work for them to keep updating that and keep everything properly balanced. I understand they don't want to invest in any more work on the back end every time they update a plane as far as where it should be, what it should be facing. Currently now they can just do that with a simple battle ranking adjustment, but it'll be more work for them, but I think it'll reap a lot of dividends as far as gameplay is concerned. The other announcement that was just made, Gaijin is going to attend the Paris Games Week 2014 exhibition, and they have an announcement that they're going to be making there, along with, I'm assuming, some footage. It appears that for ground forces battles, the United States is going to be the next country that is included. Currently we just have Russia and Germany, which, while entertaining and interesting, after a while just playing those two countries can get more than a little bit boring, and I think ground forces battles need a shot in the arm. They need that extra layer of complexity and diversity as quickly as possible, and it looks like we're going to get it. So Shermans are on the way, and that's good news, I think, for everyone that likes, like me, to play ground forces battles. Now, the somewhat larger section of this broadcast is going to be devoted to the announcements that were made at EVE Vegas a week or so ago. The keynote speech revealed some very interesting facts. CCP Seagull, as always, gave us an overview of the direction that EVE is heading in over the next few months and on into next year, and touched on such innovative things that are coming in very quickly, like the unlimited skill queue, which is a godsend for a lot of folks, especially if they don't log in very often. That's something that's been discussed for a long time. I recognize CCP's reluctance to actually do that. They do want to encourage people to log in more regularly, but it's an annoyance to the players, and I think that the player base will benefit, and the numbers in-game will benefit as a result. CCP Fozzie kind of stole the show, though. He was talking about some of the things that are going to be released in the next update in November, Phoebe, and the one following that in December, Rhea. Now, a lot of people will be very happy at his announcement that there is going to be new exploration content coming into game. Things are a little on the simple side right now as far as exploration is concerned. But soon there will be more to probe, and those new items will be more difficult to probe than what we currently have. And for a lot of folks, probing down items in space is kind of a challenging little minigame. At least it used to be until recently. And it'll be nice to see some of the more valuable content in game become something that requires some personal skills to find. I think of interest to just about everyone, whether you're a Care Bear or a PvP elite specialist, is the discussion of the new glass cannon weaponry that will be coming in to EVE. I'm sure they'll have a much nicer name, but basically they'll be specialized Tech 2 weapons that do more damage than we currently see. However, when you mount those weapons, your resistances are reduced to 0. Well, now I'll take that back. I don't know if it happens when you mount them and anytime you have them on your ship, or just when those weapons are activated. That will be interesting to see. There are going to be some interesting gameplay applications beyond the obvious one of, oh, this will make people easier to gank. I think we're going to see a lot of fleet doctrines based around this, and a lot of new strategy and tactics developed to maximize and leverage their massive offensive capability. And I imagine we're going to see it blow up in people's faces more often than not, too. So that should be amusing. For anyone that does any type of recruiting for their corporation, they were delighted to hear Fozzie's announcement that they're going to introduce a kick from Corp queue. Currently in-game, if somebody is an AWOXer and they've infiltrated your corp for the sole purpose of doing as much damage as possible, they are very difficult to get out of your corporation, which is a bit nonsensical. If they stay in space and they log back in immediately after downtime, your hands are tied. You can't get them out of your corporation until they mess up and fail to log in a timely fashion and you beat them to the punch. Well, that's no longer going to be an issue. You'll be able to put them into a queue, and at the next downtime, you will be able to blissfully acknowledge the fact that you've received an email saying they have been kicked from your corporation. And that will be wonderful. I realize that there's a small segment of the EVE population that considers this to be a fun part of their own personal gameplay, but let's face it, it just never made sense that you couldn't fire somebody whenever you wanted to. Now in Araya, we have some subjects that are near and dear to my heart. The first thing that Fozzie talked about that really captured my attention was the fact that there's a new Blackbird model coming into game. This is some concept art of the front of the new Blackbird model. And apparently, it is bristling with antennas, and I've also heard outside of the eVegas announcement that it has a lot of moving parts, possibly even engines that are uncovered when it starts to go into warp and then covered back up again when it comes out. Bristling with antenna, basically kind of an E-War insectoid of some type. But anyway, it looks cool, and we'll see what it looks like when it's finally in-game and fully textured. And frankly, the Blackbird model has been overly simplistic for far too long. While it's a classic, iconic ship, and I'm sure some people will be upset about this, as they always are when a ship is replaced, I think this is going to be, for most people who fly Blackbirds and their variants, a very, very welcome change. And on the subject of new ships, there's going to be a new ship class in EVE, tentatively called the Tug. It is going to be basically a freighter-sized vessel that you will probably want to keep to high sec for the most part. It doesn't have any jump capabilities that I'm aware of, but it will have a very large ship maintenance bay. Now you will be able to move multiple fitted battleships around in high sec with the same ease that you move anything else. It is apparently going to be a highly detailed model, which will be interesting. We'll have to see exactly how creative they can get with it. This should be of particular interest to those that tend to relocate frequently or do incursions, or really anyone that moves ships around, so let's say back and forth to a market hub in EVE. I, for one, am going to get a lot of use out of this. I'm not sure about the name, though. A lot of folks are rooting for an alternative name. Instead of calling it a tug, they think it might be more appropriate to call it a loot pinata. And you know, the more I think about it, they very well could be right. And this brings us to our last ship-related announcement that I wanted to cover today. They announced the results of the research race that was recently run in-game. It was kind of an event where you went out and got certain materials from sleeper sites and brought back and built up points. It was a contest, more or less, between the different empires, depending on what agent you turn those materials into. And the winners were, surprisingly enough, it was an Amarr victory. Everyone thought Caldera would easily win, but they did not this time. And then it was announced what they had won, which is far more interesting. Amarr will be the first empire to have access or develop Tech 3 tactical destroyers. Now, everyone thought Caldera was going to win, so actually design work went a little bit further on the Caldera version. The picture you see above here is what they have done so far on concept art for the Amarr destroyers. They're a bit crude, but they do show some of the moving parts, and apparently there'll be a lot of them on there. Now, Tactical destroyers are going to be built basically roughly the same way that Tech 3 strategic cruisers are built now, from sleeper parts and reverse engineered. But there will be some important differences. There won't be subsystems or skill loss as we currently have in game with strategic cruisers. Instead, these little destroyers will be able to shift mode on the fly. They will be able to go into a defensive mode, a speed mode, and a sniper mode, complete with animations that let you tell at a glance what mode that ship happens to be in. I have no idea what the restrictions will be, if there's a cooldown period involved between being able to shift to a different hull configuration and capabilities. But I think the game mechanics are going to be fairly obvious. Your defensive mode gives you a reduced signature radius and increased resistances. Speed is fairly obvious, and that may increase your targeting range as well, or targeting speed. And the sniper mode will increase your targeting range and your accuracy out at longer ranges with your weapons. They're going to be playing with that a lot. I'm sure they have a pretty firm grasp on the concept, but there's going to be a lot of playtesting involved on CC, which I hopefully will have time to engage in myself. Oh, he also brought along the concept art that was done for the Caldari destroyers as well. And I think they're a little bit more polished. But as you can see, they're playing with a lot of ideas, so it'll be interesting to see how this finally shakes out visually. Destroyers needed a little something extra. And I know a lot of people were hoping for Tech 3 battleships. That might be a little bit of creative overkill. And in a way, the current battleships in games such as Paladins and Marauder, the Marauder class as a whole, are kind of, in my mind, Tech 3 battleships as it is. The whole change your hull configuration and capabilities. And maybe we'll see some restructuring along that line. But destroyers have always been in a weird niche. They've been expanded recently with some new hull designs. It's about time they got a whole new role or set of capabilities assigned to them as well, because right now they're kind of niche. So I'm excited. We'll see what happens. I think that small gang warfare in particular is going to benefit from the introduction of these vessels, and perhaps for mission runners as well. It remains to be seen. Either way, we're going to see some new tactics evolve from their introduction, and that's always good to see as well. Now, not all of the interesting news was presented during the keynote speech. CCP Rise also gave a presentation on the new player experience, and a couple of interesting things surfaced during that conversation. Apparently, CCP has decided after 11 years that their design for the new player experience should actually be based around playtesting done with people that have never played EVE before. What a concept. Seriously, guys, CCP, I love you, but I had assumed that all along your whole new player experience design was based on feedback from people that have never played EVE before. Anyway, it's water under the bridge, but Rise did present some interesting pictures and video of the testing process, and it actually revealed a lot of important things, like the fact that new players instinctively try and use the WASD configuration to move their ships around, and it's frustrating when they can't move their ship because they don't know how. It's just little basic obvious things that any EVE player doesn't think twice about that throw people unfamiliar with EVE, and these are the kind of things that need to be uncovered and dealt with. And I'm delighted to see that this is finally happening. Now, controversially, this may not be the most interesting thing that CCP Rise discussed during his presentation. He touched on what I believe is a pet project of his, the concept of introducing permadeath to EVE Online. Now, currently, as we all know, although people that may be watching this broadcast that don't play EVE may not realize, currently in EVE, yes, when you die, whatever ship you're in, materials, assets, if you had cargo in the hold, whatever, it is either destroyed or dropped in space for other people to salvage, and is gone. You don't get any of your stuff back. You have to make the money to purchase it back or have it reimbursed by your corporation. But when you die, your consciousness is transferred to a new clone. Now, it doesn't have any implants in it or anything like that, but at least it's a new body and you don't die, and if you've planned properly, you don't lose any of the skills that you've spent time learning. Well, permadeath has never been really a part of Eve until possibly now. Well, not now. It's just a concept that they are toying with and discussing. It wouldn't be permadeath for all characters. They could go any number of ways with this, but I think that the most likely one is that you could assign a slot. You get 3 of them with your account. One of your character slots could be designated, whether permanently or temporarily, for permadeath characters. In other words, you create that character, they're given a lump sum of skills to spend from a limited list of skills available, mostly combat-oriented. They said they were going to be very, very careful not to put skills in there that would allow you to use this, boom, hey, I've got a bunch of skills clone that you've just made, solely for in-station purposes, manufacturing, research, that sort of thing. The whole point is for these characters to be effective, to go out and engage other characters in combat. So it sounds like they're going to be combat-oriented skills that you'll get to select from. They're discussing the fact that these characters might even have special leaderboards assigned to them. The whole point is to encourage people to take these characters and see what kind of a reputation they can build with a character that when he gets killed, he's gone. It's very easy to die in Eve. It's very difficult to stay alive in Eve for any length of time. And it would be quite challenging to build up an impressive kill score on a leaderboard compared to every other permadeath clone out there running around without dying. I think it's an interesting concept. Now, of course, people are screaming and yelling because they go, it will ruin the game. There'll just be gank alts created, which is a valid point. And it was the very first thing that Rise brought up, is that they were looking at that specifically so that you couldn't just create this character, go out and use it to suicide, kill people in high sec, and have another character come along and scoop up their loot. I think they're going to put some mechanics in place to prevent that. These are purely for more legitimate forms of combat. Can you imagine the bragging rights of playing Eve, noted as being one of the harshest games in existence as far as the penalties for getting killed, and actually get to say, and not only do I lose everything if I die, but I also lose the character. Quite a feather in your cap as a player. Well, that's it for now. I just kind of wanted to bring you up to speed on what was happening in both the War Thunder and the Eve universe. I'll let you go for now. You have a great week, and until I see you again, good hunting.
Docking request accepted.